Hey guys, I'm Jax and this is my spoiler review for the second episode of the final season of Succession. At the heart of this series is of course the Roy siblings' relationship with their father and their love/hate relationship with him, their need for approval, their need for his love, his inability to give love in the kind of, more usual sense that most people would kind of consider as love. He has tough love, hard love, but he's always keeping them at an arm's distance, and that kind of struggle between kind of hating him but still loving him and needing his approval is always kind of, at the center of everything that makes Succession work so very, very well. And this episode, once again, excels on that level, and one of the things that we've maybe never gotten the show before is that finally, all four of the children get their father, Logan Roy, to say sorry. But he doesn't really mean it. I mean, I don't think he means it. It feels very manipulative the way it always is manipulative. And it is just kind of crazy that once again, after all these characters, after all these brothers and sisters have done such despicable, awful, atrocious things as human beings, I once again am able to empathize and sympathize with them. And I feel so heartbroken by their just desperate need for this father's approval who's never going to truly give it to them in the way they want. And even though at times, like in this episode, he sits down in such a soft-spoken manner, which if we know Logan Roy, which we do, to have such a calm, sincere moment with him is so rare. And for him to kind of open up, but he's not really opening up, he's just kind of twisting them and manipulating them like he always does, and this time it kind of feels more sincere, and he's trying, and he says sorry, but because we've come so far and so much has happened with all these characters, and all the siblings in different ways don't really trust him anymore, especially after the end of season 3, to finally have a moment where he's saying sorry, and they're all just like, I don't really buy it. There's nothing really you can say at this point. It's kind of tragic because especially for Kendall and Shiv, who are really pushing against it and they don't buy it for a second, but you kind of know that secretly they still want his approval. They still want him to mean it even though they don't believe it. But Roman, I really thought might be convinced by this, but even him seems kind of, abrasive to accept this sorry. Like he asks, sorry about what? And so, I don't know, even Roman, the one who's always kind of fell back into the fold with Logan, the one who's quickest to kind of accept, his love, even though it might not be real love and he might be twisting and manipulating him. But then the tragedy of all that is that even though it doesn't seem like Roman's falling for it, at the end of the episode, we end it with Roman falling back in line with Logan and coming to the house. And I guess accepting the fake apology, which is so tragic, but it's classic Roman. Roman does this time and time and time again. He is always the one to go back to his father the quickest. He's always the one who wants the father's approval and will accept the littlest for it, and will always kind of, even though maybe subconsciously he knows his father's tricking him, he's always willing to go with his dad. Whereas I feel like Kendall and Shiv, they feel kind of, I don't know, they kind of trick themselves more into thinking they're okay with being against their father. Even though I feel like everything to do with those characters is always in seeking his approval. Especially, which is so ironic and bizarre, when they're twisting the knife in his back and they're all like, oh, but this is what our dad would love to do. Like, this is what our dad would do in our position. He'd twist the knife. And so they think they're being against their dad and they hate their dad. But really, deep down inside, they think it's going to impress him. Finally, he'll think I'm like him because he would do this awful business move and treat someone else like shit. So I'll treat him like shit and I'll twist the knife. But actually, I just really, really want his approval. And that horrible, bizarre, twisted feeling of a love-hate relationship has become so messy and so gross. It is fascinating to watch. That whole apology scene with Logan coming to the kids at the karaoke bar, of all places, such a surreal kind of visual. Everything about that was intoxicating. The writing is just so superb. At this point in season 4, all the actors, I mean, from the first second of the first episode, they were nailing it, but now they are so comfortable in these characters. It is just pure joy to watch the most tragic, horrible father-to-kid dynamic of anything. It is exceptional, fascinating, interesting, and really sad. Like, it's so sad to see so many characters that I kind of despise for different things, I don't know, just vie for this one man's love, and they're just never gonna get it. This episode, for the first 45 minutes, I was like, this is maybe one of the funniest episodes yet. Like, really firing on all cylinders. I really feel like the creators and the writers are trying to get out everything they want to say and do. Like the whole Kerry on the news anchor, kind of her audition, and just every character kind of reacting and responding to that. And just all of the Greg and Tom stuff. Like Tom and Greg this season, oh my God, they are just going full Tom and Greg, just kind of wringing out all the awkward, hilarious comedy. They're dynamic together. They are not wasting a second with these two characters who are easily my favorite characters. Greg's one-liners this episode just killing it. That Santa Claus but a hitman kind of description of Logan Roy is just perfect. That whole scene of him just walking around, as Greg would say, like Jaws. Just so funny, so intense. Really interesting to see Logan kind of realize he's going to have to kind of change what he's doing. And he's like, I'll focus here and I'm going to be here from now onwards. So I'm really interested to see how that progresses. I kind of feel like the deal is going to fall apart though. So this is kind of like, I'm not treading water necessarily, but it's setting up something that might not kind of eventuate, because I do feel like this kind of deal is going to fall apart. Like Logan, just like at the start of the show, he's kind of about to give away all his power, and then he kind of goes, well, actually, I like the power. I like being the man. So maybe I don't want to lose being the man. So I feel like it's all going to fall apart, especially with like the kids' decisions later in the episode as well. But the one thing I was so shocked and kind of baffled by was this whole thing kind of starts rolling because Kendall gets a call from Mr. Skarsgård himself, and he's all like, hey, don't push me, buddy. If you push me, it's over. And so Kendall's like, all right, let's push him. So he wants to blow up this deal? So I don't know, like I'm so baffled by like, they are talking about such a little amount of money. Like at one point Kendall's like, we'll get another 100 million. We're talking billions and billions and billions. And they're doing all of this, potentially ruining all those billions of dollars for $1 million. Just to spite his dad, but to impress his dad. And like the idea of all this money, like this unfathomable, insane amount of money being wasted and potentially losing it. And they've already promised money to someone else. So this isn't just money for them. This is money they then need to give to someone else. And it's so baffling. It shows the level of hatred and love they have for their dad. And I don't know, that last 5 minutes, I felt like it summed up the whole show in 5 minutes. This whole episode was so exceptional. We got perfect Tom and Greg stuff. Just exceptional back and forth. So funny. So ridiculous and absurd and hilarious. And then we had the 4 Roy siblings all together, all vying for their dad's love by trying to stab him in the back. And then at the end of the episode, Roman kind of comes back into the fold, because of course he does. I felt like this episode is like a micro episode that sums up the entire series so perfectly. This final season is just excelling on every level. It is so funny, so intense, so dramatic. I hate and love these characters so very much. These characters are so well-rounded, so fleshed out. There's not a weak link. Like every single character is nailing what they're doing. They're all so different, but especially like for their family, they all are kind of connected by one kind of feeling towards their dad, but they're all coming at it in such different, interesting, unique ways. It's kind of overwhelmingly cleverly written. I am in awe. Despite a lot of what the siblings do throughout the series and do to each other and say to each other, there is quite a lot of the time this really beautiful bond between them all. And it was really nice to see them all bonding in this episode. And even though they kind of treat Connor pretty badly a lot of the time, it was really nice to see them all kind of together and supporting him. And they go out for a drink with him. They go to a real American bar. And all of that was a lot of fun, seeing them kind of fish out of waters in kind of a normal place at just some karaoke bar, rather than the kind of really rich, fabulous, disgustingly expensive places that we usually see them in pretty much every single circumstance. So that was a really nice kind of contrast, and also kind of felt a bit weird because they were so kind of brotherly and sisterly to each other, which at times, even when we see little glimpses of it here and there, but this is kind of the most extended period we got with them all together, which is really nice. I pretty much love all of them. I'd say Connor's the one I don't like. Like, I don't know, I find Connor like sometimes funny, and he's an interesting dynamic to have someone who's not so business centric and business focused, kind of as a contrast in the family. But his despicableness feels somehow just grosser. His whole subplot with his wife, or to-be wife, with Willa, for the whole show has always made me feel really uncomfortable. Really, I don't know, it's got such a slimy feel to it in a way that, I don't know, like so many other characters, like from episode 1, Roman does that kid dirty with the $1 million trick at baseball, and it took me so long to like kind of enjoy him as a character after that. Shiv has done so much damage to Tom. It's hard to like her at times. Kendall, there's just so much going on with Kendall. But like all of the characters I can kind of sympathize with and I kind of enjoy watching and I can kind of understand where they're coming from. But Connor's thing with Willa has always felt like something where I'm like, I can't really get past that. At times they make Connor out to be kind of like the punching bag of the family. Like there's that episode where they all go down to the little boat thing and they'll have a little joint to celebrate like Shiv's wedding in season 1, and they literally forget, like none of them think to invite Connor. And he's always kind of left out. Like you almost forget he's part of the family at times. But I feel like he manipulates that kind of like patheticness and twists Willa into pretty much forcing her with money to be with him. So it's always felt really, really weird. And so it was kind of, I don't know, surprising and cathartic, but also devastating at the end when she's still back there in his bed. That we spend the whole episode and Willa has run away from her wedding. She can't do this. And it's kind of like, oh, finally she's like decided that this is just like beyond toxic and this is just, it's all weird and that Connor is the worst. And the whole episode they're trying to kind of like be on Connor's side, but like as an audience member, at least for me, I found the whole thing like super kind of like, I don't know, I was like, oh, finally we're getting to the end and we come up to the wedding and all these moments where you can clearly feel her cringing away from him and being like, no, no. And finally, when push comes to shove on like the rehearsal, the day before the wedding, finally she breaks free. But no, she just had like a moment lapse of like, I don't want to do this. But without saying any words, we see her in the bed at the end of the episode and Connor and her cuddle. It's just so many complicated feelings with all of that. Like for so much of the episode just being like a fist bump moment for Willa, who, I don't know, like I feel so sorry for. And I understand kind of why she would kind of stay with him. But at the same time, I've hated it so much as a subplot. It's felt so grubby and slimy. So it felt like such a beautiful way to kind of end the story and to have it just be this little lapse for her character. And we never see her off partying, so we don't really kind of get into her psyche with it all. So it was kind of a tragic moment where she comes back, even though for Connor it's kind of like a relief. I don't know. Very interesting, kind of intense, murky stuff going on there. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment below. I'd love to know what everyone thought of this episode of Succession.